Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Alright guys, so let's try this again. I don't have my normal setup, and so the mic was behaving strangely and oddly. So I am from a snowy Norway. It's cold here in Oslo. It's freezing actually. It's been snowing the entire time. I think I am sore. We've been walking miles every day. I've still been paying attention to American politics, however. And one of the things that jumped out at me recently was the hypocrite in the corner. The hypocrite that would never be president of the United States, Cory Booker. Cory Booker had this faux outrage flip out over this whole shithole comment. Now look, the idea of the president of the United States calling other countries shitholes is problematic at best. It is a disgusting and embarrassing comment to make for a president of the United States, and is frankly appalling. It's something that is unheard of from the standpoint of somebody of that particular position in that particular post. There is no excuse for it. So bake that into the cake. That's the way I feel about it. I think it's a horrible, disgusting thing. That being said, we've been talking about this shit for like a week. And in talking about this for like a week, we've had all of these people showboating purely for political reasons. There are plenty of things that bite and grate on me. Plenty of things. When I'm going to the store and I see the homeless person sitting on the street in freezing weather with a little cup, begging for quarters in order to buy himself something to eat or something cold or something warm to drink, that grates in me. It bites in me. Just as a human being looking at another human being suffering in the cold weather, it bites, it hurts to some degree. When I read stories about San Francisco using robots in order to shoo homeless people away, that bites in me. Like, as a human being, you're looking at that, and we've jumped the shark from this idea of asking people to leave to getting robots to do the dirty work. When I see stories about hospitals, places that's supposed to care for the sick and the ill and the people who need it the most, the people in their time of misery and illness, hospitals throwing people out in hospital robes, again in freezing weather, that bites in me. That bites in me. It hurts to hear something like that, particularly when you know that we have the resources that we need to handle those things because of the way we organize our system and because of the way we look at these ideas of economics. Profits are more valuable than human beings. Those are the things that grate in me when I see the United States working with Saudi Arabia in order to starve Yemenis. That bites. How can an irrational, empathetic human being look at a situation like that and not be outraged that we ourselves, our tax dollars, are going into things that are adversely affecting, killing, breaking, and mauling other human beings? There's a cholera epidemic in Yemen as a direct result from the behavior that we have been undertaking, assisting Saudi Arabia. Those things are ghastly. We're talking about other human beings who are in dire, unfathomable conditions based on our behavior and our interests and our assistance. When I see us giving billions of dollars to Israel, who by all standards, or by most, the overwhelming majority of the world's standards, is essentially a rogue nation, stealing land, murdering people, putting kids in prison, torturing children. When I see that, that grates in me. So when I see Cory Booker having this outrage over, shithole, and I have the larger context of thinking to myself, what are all of these things that bite and grate, that really, that pisses you off? What are those things? And when I compare those things that actually affect life, that destroys human beings, and I compare that to Donald Trump calling a bunch of countries shithole countries, you can understand that I see a massive disparity there between those two things. It's as if that the president who said that most Mexicans are rapists and drug dealers, they didn't believe that this guy was racist. That's the first point. The second point is calling a country a shithole country does not in any way indicate racism. I'm sorry. Ultimately, you can think a country, you can greatly dislike a particular country and going with a particular language or the way that a person talks, you can call a country a shithole country without necessarily meaning that the country is racist. They immediately jumped the shark from this idea of him calling these are countries I don't want to be in, these are shithole countries, to Donald Trump is racist because he said it. Donald Trump to me is racist because he said other things. But is this one of the things that indicates racism? Look, I disagree that this is one of those things that's a pure indication of racism. I think it's a horrible, disgusting thing to say. I full well believe Donald Trump is racist. I said it before. But that's kind of besides the point here. What I'm getting at is you have a congressman who's showboating, completely showboating. When you look closely at Cory Booker, deep down, what you find is just a shameless politician. And the shameless politician is generating this faux outrage over this particular shithole issue because he just wants to hit the president over the head with it. I'm going to show the clip that Cory Booker is flipping out and is browbeating this woman based on the shithole comment. Literally browbeating Congress, holding up airtime to hit this woman over the head based on Donald Trump's shithole comment. Listen closely to the argument that Cory Booker uses here. And ask yourself, can Cory Booker live up to the standard that Cory Booker set, meaning the precedent that Cory Booker sets in this particular thing based on the words that Cory Booker himself says? Can Cory Booker be held to that same standard? And if Cory Booker can't be held to that same standard, which Cory Booker cannot be held to that same standard, then Cory Booker is a flaming hypocrite that is using this purely for political ends. This is political showmanship. That's all it is. There's no there to this. Yes, it's a disgusting thing to say. Yes, it's a horrible thing to say. Yes, it's an embarrassing thing to say. And yes, no president should utter these particular words. In fact, I can't think of any situation where I would have thought a president utter these words with the exception of Donald Trump. Am I shocked that Donald Trump said this? No. No, the guy's a reality show host. What do you expect from a reality show host? That's it. Take a look at this. This is, my setup is different here. So forgive the technical difficulties. And I don't necessarily have my two monitors, so I can't necessarily see what everybody's commenting. I will flip to the comments afterwards. I'm going to show Cory Booker's statement here. This annoyed me. We're not talking about income inequality. We're not talking about the wars. We're not talking about the droning. We're not talking about none of this stuff. What we're having a conversation about is the president of the United States saying shithole and calling countries shitholes. That's our dialogue, and that's the level of debate. And honestly, all of this doesn't come from a place of sincerity. It comes from a place where these guys understand that real conversations that people want to have in this country about economics, if we're being honest, the full and only reason that Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump in the first place was because people thought that this reality show host cared more about the economy than Hillary Clinton herself. They still are talking about ridiculousness. Let's take a look at this. And by the way, I'm not necessarily saying that I like the idea that Donald Trump calls someone a shithole. I'm trying to put it in perspective, the context of this, showing that there are massive, massive things that are actually painful and hurtful to the human beings in this world, in this country, based on our decisions and our actions. Donald Trump causing somebody a shithole is embarrassing to me, but in no way does it bite and grate on me like these other issues. We're going to watch Cory Booker shake and rattle in full-on display of ridiculousness. Let's see. This.
In an Oval Office meeting, referring to people from African countries and Haitians with the most vile and vulgar language. The language festers. When ignorance and bigotry is allied with power, it is a dangerous force in our country. Your silence and your amnesia is complicity. Right now in our nation, we have a problem. I don't know if 73% of your time is spent on white supremacist hate groups. I don't know if 73% of your time is spent concerned about the people in fear in communities in this country, Sikh Americans, Muslim Americans, Black Americans. The fact pattern is clear of the threats in this country. I hurt. When Dick Durbin called me, I had tears of rage when I heard about his experience in that meeting. And for you not to feel that hurt and that pain, and to dismiss some of the questions of my colleagues, saying I've already answered that line of questions when tens of millions of Americans are hurting right now because of what they're worried about what happened in the White House. That's unacceptable to me.
Do you honestly believe that Cory Booker had tears of rage in his eyes when Dick Durbin called him? Do you honestly believe that? Do you believe that Cory Booker was angry and upset? Tears of rage in my eyes. I didn't know what to do with myself. I was angry. I need to beat on the desk. I'm angry. I'm Cory Booker. If you had tears of rage in your eyes, you're fucking ridiculous. All the things that you can have tears of rage in your eyes about, and this is the thing that you had tears and rage in your eyes about. I understand you being angry. I understand you being upset. I understand that you're like, oh my God, the president should have said this. I understand to some degree you even browbeating this woman. But again, look at the context. Take a look at this. Cory Booker essentially told that woman, your silence is complicity. If you don't say anything, you're being complicit. When the president of the United States calls countries shithole countries and you say you don't remember it, you're being complicit. Fair enough. So the standard that Cory Booker said here is, if you don't say something, you're being complicit. When a cursory look at Cory Booker's record, let alone the record of the Democratic Party, meaning this can be impeached in two ways. Cory Booker's record in and of itself and the record of Democrats. Meaning if Cory Booker is seeing some behavior either around the world or in organizations that he himself supports and Cory Booker keeps his mouth shut, then Cory Booker is full of shit. If it is shown that Cory Booker has engaged or interacted with people who are doing ghastly things, and Cory Booker has kept his mouth shut, then Cory Booker is full of shit. Cory Booker's argument here is your silence is complicity. Now, mind you, he's saying your silence is complicit because Donald Trump is calling somebody a shithole country. Okay, yes. Of all the things to be complicit about, I guess that's pretty bad, but I'm pretty sure we can find worse things. Let's take a look at this. This is right here. Meet Cory Booker's top donor, a right-wing Islamophobic pro-Israel outfit that backs Trump extremist agenda. This article is interesting. I put it in a thing. But there's a few parts to this that I love. Cory Booker is rapidly pro-Israel. He's rapidly pro-Israel because one of his main donors is based on is Israeli donor. That particular Israeli donor is the same Israeli donor that said Keith Ellison was anti-Semitic, which is fucking amazing. If the organization you're supporting is torturing kids, not only is that organization torturing kids, that organization is stealing land from people, literally stealing land. That organization goes in and quote-unquote mows the lawn, meaning murdering kids. When that particular organization, that government, that Israeli government that you yourself are supporting, is stealing land from people, is murdering people, is injuring, is putting people under military law, is occupying somebody else's land, is putting in this kind of open-air ghetto that is having these people in these horrendous conditions when 90-something% of the water is unusable. And that's the organization that you're supporting. When nonviolent protests, meaning the BDS movement, comes into effect and Cory Booker says, that's anti-Semitic, it's nonviolent. It's essentially saying, we don't like what you're doing and we're going to boycott. your particular or your government until you do something different, until you change. That's anti-Semitic to Cory Booker. Let's take a look at this. I'm making this point that he is rabidly pro-Israel, despite the things that Israel does, despite the calamities that Israel caused in that particular area of the world to the people who live in that country that they themselves are occupying. This is alternate, I believe. As a result of the far-right pro-Israel group giving more money to Cory Booker than any other donor, Booker has been incentivized to stand by the state of Israel over the interests of his own party and constituents. As President Obama and the Democratic Party pushed for the Iran deal in 2015, Republican Speaker of the House John Boehner invited Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to come and speak in opposition of the Iran deal. While nearly 60 Democrats, including Vice President Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Keith Ellison, skipped the speech, Cory Booker took the NORPAC line, appearing in the audience as a foreign nation bashed the president and the leader of his own party before a joint session of Congress. Imagine that shit. Barack Obama is being bashed. The person who's in charge of his party, the president of the United States, is being bashed by a foreign leader. And Cory Booker is sitting in the audience, being complicit to that. Uses his own fucking words. It's fucking amazing. Booker did no different in the aftermath of the United Nations Resolution 2334, which condemned Israel settlements in the West Bank, releasing a one-paragraph statement. The UN resolution was a one-sided effort targeting the state of Israel that set back efforts to move us closer to a two-state solution and to peace. That's why I spoke out against the resolution before the Security Council vote in December. Our legislative efforts makes it clear that U.S.-Israel partnership is unbreakable, and the UN is an inappropriate venue to impose restrictions on the peace process, and Congress will act to protect direct negotiations that will move us closer to a two-state solution. Now, again, this is BS. The idea of a two-state solution, if you're pretending that you're moving towards a two-state solution, this has been 40 fucking years. What incentive does Israel have to go for a two-state solution? The presidents of the United States, or the United States, continuously protects Israel from resolutions. In this particular case, Obama allowed this non-aggressive or non-binding resolution to go through, meaning it had no teeth to it. Ultimately, the only reason that the United States let it go through is because it had no teeth to it. If the United States is going to continuously protect Israel, regardless of what Israel does, Israel kills 2,000 people, 80% of which are civilians. That's okay. The United States still sends weapons. Cory Booker still supports it. If that process that's been taking place over the last 50 years, if that process continues to go through, and as that process goes through, Israel continues to steal more land, continues to put more people in prison, continues to disenfranchise and kill, periodically in order to quote-unquote mow the lawn, how is that moving towards a peaceful solution? It's a dog and pony show. Ultimately, the United States is not a fair arbiter. How are you going to have any kind of peace process when the person who's actually being the arbiter is purely in the bag for one of the sides in that particular negotiation and allows them to steal more land, allows them to demolish more homes? How is this a peace process? The statement is a bullshit statement incentivized by the people who are putting money in Cory Booker's pocket, who just so happens to be from the state of Israel. Explain to me. Is this not being complicit to war crimes? It's not a one-sided resolution. The truth of it is, one country is occupying another country. The people who are resisting that occupation cannot necessarily be blamed entirely for the resistance of the occupation. If you weren't there, they would have nothing to resist against. You are on their land, stealing their land. What is the Cory Booker-approved way of resistance? It's a Cory Booker-approved way of resistance. Cory Booker is full of shit. Let's keep going. There's more. And it gets worse. So this makes another point. And I actually remember this. Do you remember when Obama, the Wall Street president, gave tepid criticism about Wall Street? And Cory Booker was like, ugh, this is nauseating. This is nauseating. You're talking about Wall Street in a bad way. This is nauseating. According to CrowdPack database, of all the campaign contributions since 1980, 12.4% of Booker's incoming campaign donations have been from the financial sector. Booker's loyalty to big business went so deep that in the midst of the 2012 presidential election, he attacked President Obama over his criticism of Mitt Romney for his time at Bain Capital. Booker stated, "It's nauseating to the American public." No, it's just nauseating to you because you're being paid by these assholes. "It's nauseating to the American public. Enough is enough. Stop attacking private equity." In a tweet, Senator John McCain thanked Cory Booker for defending private equity. This led the Republican National Committee to launch a petition titled, "I Stand with Booker." I stand with Booker. Do you know how embarrassing that is? You know how embarrassing that is? You're attacking your own president to protect plutocrats. Fucking embarrassing. These are the same plutocrats that crash the national, essentially crash the economy, the world economy. But Cory Booker stands with those plutocrats. Now, this is Obama being the Wall Street president, the guy who got into office, and Citigroup essentially filling out his campaign. Citigroup being choosing who's going to be in his particular office, who is going to be in his administration, and the majority of those people being in his administration. So this is the Wall Street president. The president got bukus of money from Wall Street, giving tepid criticism, and only because he was running in an election. Cory Booker didn't even like this tepid criticism. It bothered him. Oh, this is nauseating. This is nauseating. These are great people. They put money in my pocket all the time. These are great fucking people. Explain to me, if you're complicit in the behavior of vulture capitalists, essentially Romney's company, what he was talking about were people who go into companies, strip those companies to the bone, take as much and extract much wealth and profit out of it as those people can before that country either went bankrupt or they can find some way to retool that company. But ultimately, they didn't really give a shit about the company. Ultimately, it was about sucking as much profit out of that particular company as they possibly can. Didn't care about the social consequences. Didn't care about the people who were at that company. If that mean they needed fired people in order to give themselves millions of dollars, then they would fire people to give themselves millions of dollars. Cory Booker is complicit in this. It's nauseating. His complicity is nauseating. His complicity in murder is nauseating. I don't remember him bitching about the drone wars when we were going into one country after the next and Obama's murdering thousands of civilians. It's nauseating. Silence, according to Cory Booker, is complicity. What does that make Cory Booker? It makes him a goddamn hypocrite. That's what it makes Cory Booker. Speeches like this where he's showboating. You're angry. I'm so angry. I'm angry. The only thing I can talk about is identity, so I'm talking about identity. And I can get riled up about identity in this showboat wig. And I practiced in the mirror for hours before I came out here to showboat and pretend as if I have this phony outrage. Full of shit. Cory Booker is absolutely full of shit. Politicians, if you peel back the layers of a politician, what you will find is just a more shameless politician. If you go further, you'll find, again, more shameless politician. There's no there there. There's no there there. This is all politics. This is all politics. This is phony outrage because they have nothing else to talk about. Trump in Russia, Trump and Nazis, Trump has sex with a porn star, Trump now calls countries shithole countries. Because Trump calls countries shithole countries, Trump is now racist. It runs the gambit. Nobody knows what Democrats stand for. Democrats don't know what Democrats stand for. Hence, this. This is all they have. This is all they have. I don't like Cory Booker. I don't like most of these people, but I damn sure don't like Cory Booker. It's just fucking shamelessness. All right. Let's see. Cory Booker is like candy that is being offered to children beside an industrial shredder ready to kill off the grassroots and anti-establishment movement. Yeah, so these guys, yes, that's true. The Democratic Party is where movements go to die. I mean, honestly, the things that these guys say, if you remember, Cory Booker was one of the Democrats that turned down the Bernie Sanders thing. Bernie Sanders was trying to get drugs imported into the United States. And guess what? Cory Booker shot that down. Cory Booker, after shot that down, gets mauled by progressives, then it comes running back saying, wait, Bernie Sanders and I actually came up with the deal. I just cared about Canadian, what do you say? I cared that drugs weren't going to be imported into the United States that were harmful to Americans. I was fearful of Canadian drugs. Canadians are dying in the streets from bad drugs, and I didn't want that to happen to the United States. He is one of the most shameless fucking politicians and one of the most fakest politicians. And I'm sorry, I see this and I look at this and I'm like, you're full of it. You're creating a standard that is impossible for you to live by. It's like fucking insane. It's like, come on. I am okay with a politician getting riled up when that politician feels it deep. Like when you see Bernie Sanders in the well of Congress, a socialist, flipping out about some kind of capitalist thing. He is a socialist. He's flipping out about some kind of capitalist thing that grinds in him. It's buried in him. It's fucking economic system. When you see Elizabeth Warren foaming at the mouth at bankers, whatever you want to think about fair weather friend Elizabeth Warren and other matters, yes, she's a political animal. She also hates bankers. A banker took her lollipop as a 2-year-old, and Elizabeth Warren just never forgot it. And in the same way that you have people who see their mom's feet or see somebody else's feet when they're a kid and they get turned on by feet later on in life, Elizabeth Warren hates bankers. It's this thing that's in her head. As soon as she sees a banker, she just, hate bankers. I want to punch a banker in the face. Yeah, I believe her on that. It drills down in her. But Cory fucking Booker having tears in his eyes when Dick Durbin calls him, come on. Come on. That's like Hillary Clinton carrying around hot sauce. Do you honestly believe that Hillary Clinton carries around hot sauce whenever she goes somewhere? Do you honestly believe that Cory Booker had tears in her eyes, had tears in his eyes when Dick Durbin called him? It's fucking ridiculous. My wife and I, as we're coming through Norway, we passed, it's freezing here. Snowing, snow's on the ground. And the temperature in Norway is roughly the same temperature in Virginia at this point. I mean, it had gotten really hot in Virginia. It's freezing here. And there are people on the street, and they're with a little sign up and a little cup, and they're wrapped in one, and they just want people to put change in their pockets, in the coins, in the thing. In Richmond, it's the same way. California, same way. All across the United States, same way. The stock market hit 25,000. The stock market is breaking records. That money isn't coming based on this awesome economy. That money is just a bubble. That money is coming from them getting cash hand over fist. Not necessarily from economic policies, if that makes sense. Yes, Donald Trump is putting this tax cut and everything else. But the top 1% has been doing magnificently well. Rest of the country, not so much. They're parking that money into stocks. That money is not invested. The money is not invested. That money is put into their pockets, or that money is put into stocks. Now, the reason I make this point is that this is not indicative of this economy that's spinning awesomely. You have a lot of people who are hurting in this country. You have income inequality that is through the roof under Obama. Income inequality went further than it was under Bush. 95% of the wealth going to the top 1%. I'm making this point that poverty in this country is debilitating. And poverty doesn't necessarily affect just one generation. One of those studies, it's more than one study, but one of the studies took place where they were looking at famine and that effect on next generations, meaning generations that take place, from one to the next, to the next, to the next. And within multiple generations, they were still able to see the effects of the famine that took place like decades prior. I'm making the point that the poverty in this country, UN came in, said they were third world conditions in some aspects of the United States. That doesn't just adversely affect one generation. The secondary question to this is, if this is the most prosperous country on the planet, if we can spend $1 trillion on the military, if we can bump the budget by like $80 billion, some ungodly sum, if we can do that, and we still have people sleeping on the street, why is Cory Booker outraged by that? Like how? What is the pain of a person sleeping on the street? I'm trying to get this across. That is a mind-blowing thing to me, that a human being doesn't necessarily have somewhere to lay their head at night, doesn't have somewhere to eat, doesn't have clothing to put on his back, at least in a normal circumstance, and ultimately is in dire straits. Why isn't Cory Booker outraged over this? Why is he up here shaking and rattling and flipping out? Why doesn't he have tears in his eyes over this? Why? Why? He seems to be perfectly okay with this idea of protecting Wall Street. He seems to be perfectly okay with protecting the rogue terrorist state Israel. What is his issue here? Yeah, black budget, DARPA, yeah. It's over $1 trillion a year. It's fucking aggravating, man. I don't like phonies. Don't like phonies. Because I know he's doing this for reasons that have nothing to do with the things that he's saying. And it's fucking infuriating. Crossbones, Jamal, when you're running for office, bro, I am not running for office. I could never get in. I didn't see any homeless where I live. I can remember that until the 1990s. About then, yeah. Well, you have Reagan and you have Clinton. And Clinton, for the most part, just enshrined the things that Reagan did. No, not immediately after. I'm just saying Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama, and all of those people, for the most part, were to the right. And being to the right, this idea of the country itself suffered. I suggest people watch PMQ, Prime Minister Questions, and listen to the stuff that Theresa May says. And I think what you will find is the Conservative Party in England is essentially the Democratic Party in the United States. Not just the Democratic Party. It's further to the left than the Democratic Party. They get you this idea on how ghastly Democrats are in this country. It's fucking amazing. No, poverty isn't the thing that get Cory Booker out of bed in the morning. Military, meaning us bombing and murdering innocent people abroad, isn't the thing that get Cory Booker out of bed in the morning. Rampant homelessness, rampant poverty, hospitals throwing people out in the streets at night. Those aren't things that get Cory Booker out of bed in the morning. None of that. Yemenis being starved to death. Yemenis dying of cholera. That doesn't get Cory Booker out of bed in the morning. The president of the United States bombing one country after the next. That doesn't get him out of bed in the morning. That doesn't rattle him. That doesn't give him tears of anger. That doesn't do that. You know what does? Donald Trump calling country shittos. Hurting other countries' feelings is what get Cory Booker out of bed in the morning. That's what make Cory Booker angry. Fucking amazing. Fucking amazing. Yeah, that's fucking amazing. It's aggravating. And people wonder why other people don't like politicians. Yeah. 800,000 homeless in Germany, half of its refugees. The Crinkled Torben Chris Glees. It's sadly true. It is true. It is true. Everything that I said has been true. Everything I said has been true. It's not that I like the shitto comment. So don't misunderstand me. This is not a defense of Donald Trump. This is just a defense of integrity. A defense of goddamn common sense. It's like, it's the difference between being slapped in the face and run over by a Mack truck. And you sit there and watch the person get slapped in the face. And that person flips out. It's like, but wait a minute. That guy just got ran over by a Mack truck. So what the fuck? How are you flipping out about the slap? Oh, Pat, thank you, man. Pat Hacker, thanks for the forum, Jamal. Pat, thank you for showing up to the forum. Believe it or not, it's not really a forum if nobody shows up. So it's not just me. This is all of us. D. Martin, you don't like ponies? Hillary will make a great president. Bernie Sanders. I can't think of anyone better than Chuck Schumer for Minority Whip. Bernie Sanders. Oh, man, that's funny. I like ponies. I like ponies. I want a pony. Shit, man. Who doesn't want a pony? Who doesn't want a pony? Hey, you. Hi, Ron Paul is further to the left than Democrats. You know what's wild about that? In some cases, yes. It depends. In some cases. So if you're talking about war, agree. We're in agreement. But this is libertarians in general. You're talking about drugs being legal, agreed. Like I agree with libertarians in a very specific and somewhat even a philosophical perspective. Leave me to my devices. Allow people to be to their devices. Allow people to be free. Why I break with libertarians, and the reason why I think this stuff is cartoonish, is because there's no such thing as freedom without food, clothing, shelter, a sense of fulfillment, water, air, that type of stuff. There's certain things as a human being you need to exist. If you don't have those things, you need to exist. There's no such thing as freedom. Like that's the issue. These libertarians have this odd and weird idea that you can somehow be free left to your own devices. Doesn't work that way. Doesn't work that way. Libertarians are insane. They're dangerous, in my opinion. They are. Torben, Chris Glees, yeah. There's bad. Yeah, you know what? They're bad as Soviets. And I don't mean Soviets from the standpoint of just this basic idea of what they wanted to be communism be. I'm talking about the Stalinism that it became. Like, it's this blind ideology that doesn't care about the way human beings function in reality. So, I've had libertarians tell me, well, I mean, look, homeless shelters and stuff can just deal with that stuff, like soup kitchens and all. We don't need government to do that. I mean, ultimately, I mean, if people just gave, that would be enough. And you're like, you honestly believe that there are enough charitable organizations to deal with poverty and all the stuff that takes place. Ultimately, they just don't want to deal with it. They're unempathetic. They don't give two shits about it. So they come up with a bullshit reason for this stuff. What they miss is that depending on the society that you want, meaning if you want a society that it doesn't have crime or the very least low in crime, if you want a society that has this kind of, let me say it this way. To get the society that they say they want, they can never get it in the means that they're talking about. Meaning, if you want this kind of elevated freedom, then you need certain things in your society that makes that the case. And I'm sorry, that requires a certain amount of government. The issue in this isn't necessarily what's the size of government, is what do you need your government to do? Those are different questions. Those are different questions. You're nailing it, doubt charities be able to solve anything. Why would charities be able to solve anything? Like, I don't. Policy is what solves things. Policy. Meaning, if you say, I am going to get rid of homelessness, and that's your objective, I'm going to get rid of homelessness. And then the first question becomes, that's a technical question. How do we get rid of homelessness? Now, the libertarian just pretends as if this stuff is just magic. Well, I mean, you just leave people to their devices, let people be free, completely missing the fact that what they're talking about is essentially just an oligarchy. You're talking about the top 1% owning massive amounts of wealth, more and more wealth, and essentially drawing a line around and saying, this is mine, with an ever-increasing share going to the top 1%. They call that freedom. They call that freedom. That's amazing. You have 1% owning like massive amounts, and more as the rest of the population gets poorer and poorer. And that 1% owning so much, excluding these other people, whether they realize it or not. Government is supposed to be the bellwether. That's supposed to be the thing that balances those scales. This idea of a government is purely because of this idea of class antagonisms. If you don't have government in this mix, you have no support. You have no bulwark. Government is the thing that you as a society have some influence and input into. Private enterprises, you don't. In fact, government uses private enterprise to hide certain things that it doesn't necessarily want the public to see, because the public has no eyes into what public or private interest does. If the United States wants to hide something, they may bring in a private company and have that private company do that particular behavior, that particular enterprise, because Freedom of Information Act in no way applies to private enterprise. Private, it's even in the name. Stay out, none of your business, go fuck yourself. What they're talking about is a dictatorship of oligarchs. That's what they're talking about. That's what they're fundamentally talking about. Yeah, that's what they're talking about. I agree with these guys when they're talking about allow people to be free, allow people to be left to their own devices. They just miss the point that freedom is not Freedom is a definition that can be argued over. But I would argue that for a human being, freedom is not just, running naked in the sun. It's also having these things where you're supported in the things that you do. There's no capacity or no situation where you're working 50, 60 hours a week in a job that you hate and you're calling that freedom. Zero. Absolutely zero. Jeremy Shulman. Our society promises us to be specialists. None of us are independent. No, we're all interrelated to one another. Pat Hacker. But that's not really important. I don't know what to say. Freedom is not free. Torben Chris Glee. No, it's not. But it depends on what you mean by freedom. You must understand, when you hear Paul Ryan, Cory Booker, Obama, when you hear all these guys talk about freedom and hope and all this other stuff, they're not talking to you. The conversation in Washington is a conversation among oligarchs. Ultimately, you have Democrats and Republicans, both of which essentially serve oligarchs. Sometimes they serve the exact same oligarch. The money that's flowing through Congress means that they pay attention to them, not you. They build their audience in the same way that I build my audience. When I make a video, there's a certain wavelength for people that accepts and listen to this particular video. I know that my audience is probably going to be to the left and maybe further to the left than most. That's my audience. Each video I do, that's the audience I build. Not intentionally, it's just who I am, so that's the people who respond to my particular videos. Congress is somewhat the same. Meaning Congress, presidents, politicians, they respond to the people who are paying them. That's the key point. The arguments and the conversation that they're making is cut in a particular way because they need to trick the public into voting for them. But ultimately, they're talking about a very specific, select group of people who are putting money in their pockets. When Paul Ryan is making this conversation about freedom, he is talking about freedom. He's just not talking about it for you. He's talking about it for people with means who are putting money in their pockets. There's a difference in those things. There's a difference in those things. D. Martin, Pat, I'm guessing JT is about half our age. You're probably not gonna know my age. I'm younger than I look. I'm a lot younger than I look. Yeah, I'm a lot younger than I look. I'm 40. I will be 41 this year. Hear my battle cry. I want my Constitution back. Hoodie woman, Louisiana. You know, so it's funny. Somebody asked me, do you think we'd ever hit fascism? And I had to break it to her. Like, you understand that United States troops, the National Defense Authorization Act allowed them to put troops on our shores, meaning on our home soil. Chris Hedges believes that this was in response to Occupy Wall Street, meaning when all of these people rose up and started occupying these areas around the United States, it freaked people out. Instead of the Obama administration using this as a reason to push for more aggressive, well, what can I say, policy in regards to making sure that the wealth is appropriated more so at the bottom as opposed to just flowing automatically to the top. He broke Occupy Wall Street. The government worked with state, federal government worked with state and local government in order to crush the Occupy Wall Street movement. He didn't want to use it as a push. In fact, he didn't want to use it at all because ultimately those weren't the people who he represented. When he allowed homeowners to go bust while protecting Wall Street, I'm the one standing between you and the pitchforks. Why are you standing between Wall Street and the pitchforks? Who do you represent? It became extraordinarily clear who Obama represented. It became extraordinarily clear who the Democrats represented. It is extraordinarily clear who Booker and Harris and these people represent. It is not you. It is vitally important that people understand that. It is a one-party system. You essentially have two wings of the exact same party. They agree on reality in the way that it is, meaning they agree on this idea of this kind of capitalistic, militaristic structure as the government is. They see no difference. The difference that they see is ultimately just degrees. You don't have this vote in regards to, I don't want militarism. Well, that's not on the ballot. That's not on the ballot. How do you vote against Goldman Sachs? That's not on the ballot. How do you vote against Wall Street? That's not on the ballot. That's not on the ballot. What you get is a conversation about identity. That's what you get to vote on. That's what you get to vote on. This idea of capitalism, this idea of tax cuts, this idea of being obsequious to the rich, meaning the donors, those things are already agreed upon. Those things are already agreed upon. It's a duopoly, a monopoly with two actors. Torben, Chris Scalise, yes, agreed. Same corporate masses, mostly young, agreed. The Cory Booker thing is interesting. If you notice, in this article, they made point that this guy, one of his main donors, is a rabid right-wing Islamophobe. And you realize, well, these guys have the same donors. I mean, the same guys who were donating to Jeb Bush were fundamentally the same people who were donating to Hillary Clinton. You can slap between one and the other. It's not that big of a difference between those two things. It's really not. Yeah. They agreed to pretend and to live in a meritocracy. Captain Obvious. Yeah, but that's only because it fulfills the ideology, if that makes sense. Like, if you have $1 billion, well, I got $1 billion. Clearly, I earned $1 billion, even if I just inherited it. Well, you're emeritus. So, yeah. In my opinion, Bernie Sanders is the only honest actor in politics. He could and would have won. Yes, he would have won. Bernie Sanders is still a politician. I think he tries to be earnest, but ultimately, Bernie Sanders is like a starship captain trying to follow the prime directive. I mean, that sounds funny as a comparison, but I say it that way because what you'll find is that the prime directive gets tweaked, twisted, and bent according to what the captain needs in a particular moment. Sanders takes certain positions for political reasons at times, meaning the Russia thing. I don't know if he believed it, but at the very least, he supported Democrats on that. The bashing of Vladimir Putin, the bashing of Assad, all these things. Now, that being said, Sanders in those interviews, at least in the Syria one, does add in this idea of Iraq and everything else and tries to inject this kind of good sense into the mix. But Sanders is a politician. But amongst the other politicians, yeah, he's better. It's just better. Bernie is like the stepchild of the DNC, always trying to do good with them, but never good enough. Fuck the DNC to Mostly Young. Agreed. Oh, Crossbones, thank you. What effect do you think cryptocurrency will have on the balance of power in the world? What happens when stock markets crash again? So that's fascinating, right? I've been watching the cryptocurrency thing. They lost billions of dollars yesterday. Did you see that? It was like a blip. And they lost billions. And nobody can explain why. At least I've read nothing as to explain why cryptocurrency went belly up in the way that it went. That's terrifying for people to put money in that. And that money just evaporate. And nobody knows why the money evaporated. I don't think it's going to have any effect. At least not immediately. I have a hard time believing that the U.S. government is going to give up its control of the currency. I just don't see it. I don't see it at all. Imagine the ridiculousness of a bunch of currencies coming out. You have 10 different currencies. It's like, why do you have... I don't think the dollar is going to be replaced in the United States. So I'm skeptical of this idea of these currencies having this kind of major impact. I could be completely wrong, and I have to be honest. My understanding of this stuff is somewhat tangential. I've been reading up more on it because it's been coming in the news a little bit more. But what does it look like in the future? Who the hell knows? Who the hell knows? What I do know is that was a major drop last night. And the value, like some of the comparisons they were given is the amount that they lost would have been the total value of Amazon. Like, think of, that's a massive amount of money to lose, like, just over, just in a blip. It's fucking amazing. Fucking amazing. Jim Hidden, nobody believes in ghetto bitcoins. I didn't say they were ghetto bitcoins. I just say it was a little disturbing that it could lose that much value. That's all I mean. Dragon 12 Pirelli, who creates the currency? They mine Bitcoins. It's some kind of computer thing that mines the Bitcoin. It's interesting. I just don't know what impact is going to be. Blah blah. Did Cory Booker pass his audition to get into the House of Cards? No, because that is fucking shameless. No, he doesn't get my vote at all. James Webb could have won. They paid off after one debate. What is that? Renge 9909. The crinkled one. That's awesome. The face Bernie was making at the DNC convention was not the face of a man who got paid off. Yeah, the bruise looked fresh. Oh, wasn't bruised. Nobody beat Bernie Sanders up. Nobody beat Bernie Sanders up. Everything good about crypto is going to be wiped out by government controls. Zox Avox. Yeah, I got to be honest. I have a hard time believe that the United States government is going to give up control of its currency. I just don't believe it. So why did Bernie file a lawsuit since the fraud was exposed and easily provable? Because Hillary offered him a cabinet position to shut up. He's a career. No. Ring 9909. No, that's not true. In fact, it was the opposite. I would say read some of the stuff that was going on behind the scenes. And what you would find is he didn't want a cabinet position. What you saw was actually, essentially from Bernie Sanders' standpoint, is what Bernie Sanders wanted. Bernie Sanders wanted influence. But he wanted influence from the standpoint of their policy positions that I want. It wasn't, I want to be Secretary of State. If that was the case, that would have been relatively easy. Bernie Sanders was, I want influence. I want lefty policies. I want you to put your name on a dotted line saying these are the things that you're going to support. That's what he wanted. Like, I understand this idea of being somewhat cynical from the standpoint of this is the way politicians act. But Sanders, in this particular case, was pushing for policy. He was pushing for policy. Hillary Clinton was pushing for Secretary of State. She wanted a platform in order to springboard it to the presidency, which is why everybody was saying it's her turn. That's not what Sanders wanted. Be fair. That's not what Sanders wanted. You can call him a sheepdog. You can say that you wish you pushed harder. You can say you wish you fought. You can say you wish you called out the cheating. All those things are absolutely fair and true. You could say you wish you would have signed on to the fraud lawsuit. Again, fair. All those are fair. But come on. What Bernie Sanders wanted in this case was overt. He wanted policy concessions. Their issue, if you remember, the reason why he wasn't signing on to Hillary or wasn't backing her right off the bat was because he wanted policy concessions. She wasn't willing to give those concessions. As it moved on, he was able to push in regards to the Union Reform Commission and this type of stuff. That's when he signed on. But Bernie Sanders had given up a lot of his leverage right off the bat, saying that he was going to support whoever was going to win because Bernie Sanders didn't believe he had any chance of winning. You must understand, Sanders ran that race from the perspective of, I don't have a chance of winning. Jeremy X, keep it up, Jamal. Appreciate the content while you're away. Booker makes me sick and even had the nerve to call into Breakfast Club crying about Trump. Jeremy X, thank you, Jeremy X. Guys, the super cash is immensely appreciated. Look, you guys have no idea. I greatly appreciate my patrons, and I greatly appreciate the people who donate super cash. It really does support the show, and it really does help keep this going on. This has been a weird year, so it's appreciated. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jeremy X. Guy Smiley, when people ask why didn't Bernie burn down the bridge, they never ask themselves what happens next. You know what? And Guy Smiley, they never ask themselves the second question. What would I have done? What would I have done? Not in this just intellectual way, if that makes sense. Bind themselves to the situation. Like, bind themselves to that exact situation that Sanders was in. And you think from yourself, what would 100 people do? What would 100 people do? And if 75 of those people would have did the exact same thing Bernie Sanders did, then at that point, it's hard to overly criticize him. Yes, you criticize him, but I'm saying it's hard. I don't think people are superhuman. I don't think people have this some people are, meaning, you know, this ability to endure great stress and go against the trends and all this other stuff. Most people are not. Most people are just human beings. Meaning, my expectation of somebody in a situation like that, regardless of what I want, is for that person to act like a typical human being. And I know typical gets a little sketchy. I'm just saying the incentives built into the system itself are the things I think that tends to push people in a particular way. The software, regardless of the human intellect, meaning what that human being may want to do, that human being has forces acted upon him. Those forces are not necessarily somebody punching him in the eye. Bernie Sanders getting punched in the eye. Those forces have more to do with political pressure. Bernie Sanders said before, I don't want to be Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader didn't lose that election for Al Gore, but it doesn't really matter. Ultimately, he said, I don't want to be Ralph Nader. What that means is I don't want to be ostracized from a political situation. And I got to be honest, I have a hard time seeing a better political outcome. Hillary Clinton loses the election. And she doesn't just lose the election, she loses to reality show hosts. It's like, I keep saying, Democratic Party, if the superdelegates didn't want to put up Bernie Sanders, then those superdelegates should have put up a ham sandwich. Donald Brazil should have said Hillary Clinton was unwilling to run, and they should have installed the ham sandwich and let the ham sandwich run against Donald Trump. And we would have President Ham Sandwich right now in that office. Now, the vice president in this case would be important because President Ham Sandwich wouldn't last the entirety of the 4 years. All I'm saying is, if they wanted to keep that office, President Ham Sandwich was their best bet if they didn't necessarily want to run Bernie Sanders. Now, I say that because he's, how can I say this? Donald Trump was one of the easiest people to beat. And the worst person they could have put up against Donald Trump was Hillary Clinton. And yet they put her up anyway. But I have to ask, you ask the question of what are the pressures that they apply to somebody. And if he said, I don't want to be Ralph Nader, and he doesn't want to be ostracized, and he doesn't want people, I know what I was saying. Best case scenario. So Hillary Clinton loses to reality show hosts. Now, nobody blames Sanders. There are some bitter Hillary Clinton supporters who blame Sanders. Those people can go fuck themselves. Hillary Clinton lost this election purely on her own. But that's kind of my point. The overwhelming majority of the public sees Hillary Clinton as losing this election on her own merits. This is not a situation where Sanders ran third party and people are vocally blaming Sanders in the same way that people blame Ralph Nader. This is Hillary Clinton losing on her own merits, on her own devices to reality shows. And Bernie Sanders coming about as being the most popular politician in this country in spades. That is the best case scenario. Hillary Clinton wrote a book called What Happened? And in writing that book of What Happened, people laughed. They laughed. It was a comedy. She didn't intend it to be a comedy, but it ended up being a comedy. Her husband, Bill Clinton, looked at that book and said, you can't publish this. He was like, you can't publish this. Deceives. I think he said surly or something like that. But my point is, if you're looking at what is the best case scenario that you want in this situation, and is it possible that this is the best case scenario? Like, what happens in 2020? Do you honestly believe that the conversation we're having now, where we're pushing and you have all of these lefty groups attacking that party, and the question of legitimacy comes up, and you have this interregnum where there is this contest for what it means to be the left? Do you honestly believe that if Hillary Clinton had won that election, or if it was a situation where Sanders was blamed for tanking the election for Hillary Clinton, that this would be the conversation that we'll be having? I don't think so. I don't think so. I understand the ire. I understand being annoyed with Sanders. Lord knows I've been. The way JT always says what happened is the best. Well, that's the way I hear it in my head, Pete. What happened? It's too ridiculous. It's too ridiculous. How I Lost by Hillary Clinton is amazing. Joe Lori's book, How I Lost by Hillary Clinton, is amazing. I'm going to have to check that out. The best case would be Bernie Sanders would have left the party, and we now busily building a third. Underdog 47 agreed. Underdog 47. I might agree with that, yeah. I may agree with that. Sanders, I think in his mind, believes that he can. I think Sanders believes as an outreach coordinator, he's doing two things. And I personally, I think it's risky because I don't necessarily think he may I don't necessarily think it's a lock for him to pull it off, but I don't even think he thinks it's a lock to pull it off. I think he's thinking, I can be outreach coordinator. I can stay active and in the public limelight for the next X amount of years. And in staying in the public limelight for the next amount of years, I can use the machinery of the Democratic Party itself in order to pull people over to my side of thinking and to get these people into the party. So in 2018 or 2020, when I run, those people would be in the party itself. I can't think of any other reason than that. Now, does that work? Maybe. Maybe. Fucking risky. I mean, ultimately, you can end up with a situation of just delivering people to the Democratic Party without you winning it all, if that makes sense. Like, imagine a situation of you sheepdogging people into the party and then you lose in the primaries and you have Kamala Harris just taking it. Or what's the other one? Gillibrand taking it. Some just random person. So, yeah, it's risky. Whether it works or not, I don't know. I think that's the strategy. That's the only strategy that I can see this taking place. I can see the war he's waging on this idea of superdelegates and all this other stuff. It seems that that's the case only because that seems to be the way that he's fighting and the way that they're trying to make inroads. We'll see, man. 2018, 2020. The DNC just waves at Bernie a stick whenever populism threatens to rear its head. Bob, that's the other thing, right? So, Bernie Sanders has been in politics, what, 40 years? I would imagine that he understands that that's what they're doing. He has to. Like, he would be incompetent to not understand that. But I think this stuff isn't zero-sum. This stuff isn't zero-sum. There are going to be things that Sanders wants to accomplish in which he leverages the Democrats for, probably the machinery being the main thing. And there are going to be things that they're going to leverage him for, meaning popularity, populism, and that type of stuff. Elizabeth Warren, same thing. You know, they throw these guys out when they want to wave the populism flag because they themselves are so unpopular. Agreed. But you understand, anything that you do has positives and negatives. Like, there's no situation where Sanders is going to make a move and he gets everything that he wants and nobody else gets anything else. And it's like, you know, that doesn't work that way. Of course he's going to give something if he wants to get something in return. Meaning, yes, he's going to give his leverage if he himself wants to be able to leverage the machinery of the DNC. That's my thinking. I could be wrong, but that's my thing. At his age, what does he have to lose by leaving the party and taking Nita and Tulsi with him? D. Martin, no, agreed, man. It's not, you misunderstand. It's not that I disagree with you. I've made videos saying that Bernie Sanders should leave the party. I've made videos saying Bernie Sanders is a problem, particularly if you're talking about a third party. So if you had something like the People's Party, Bernie Sanders can be somewhat of a problem for the People's Party. But if I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, and if for this moment I'm not being overly cynical, it doesn't mean I'm right. It doesn't mean he's wrong, and vice versa. You have to get squares in chess. Yeah, Boris, yeah, agreed. That's my point. There's no perfect moves in this. Luca Clemente, no corporate Democrats like Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, or Bob Ramirez. Bob Ramirez is a corporate Democrat. Oh, that's funny. So, more Clinton Obama incrementalism until we die of old age waiting. Well, Bob, come on. And maybe this is me being naive. Like, this might be one of those moments where I'm naive, and this might be me being biased. So, fair enough. I bake it into the cake. It's possibly I'm biased on this. But I do see a path. Like, be honest. You can see a path here. So, Democrats take the House in 2018. And this is, they take the Senate, 2018. For the next 2 years, they're bulwark against Donald Trump. Meaning, yes, they're feckless. No, they're not going to get anything done. But at the very least, they put a stop on some of the bad stuff that Trump does in that office. In 2020, Sanders runs. And this is the rosiest picture that I can think of. Meaning, this is the path that I can see. Sanders runs in 2020. Say for the moment Sanders wins the primary and Sanders beats the stuffing out of Donald Trump. The Democratic National Committee is chosen by the President of the United States, meaning the people who he's going to put in that office is probably going to purge elements of the DNC. and is going to form those people into making more look like him. Now, that being said, the policies that Sanders are going to put forth is going to get resistance by Democrats in the same way the policies FDR had resistance by Democrats during his time period. Sanders is going to have to do one or two things. He's either going to run against those Democrats, trying to get those Democrats out of office and get people more like him in office, or he's going to back down and do stuff. But my point in this is something amazing happens. You don't have this milquetoast Obama in office that just this, vulgar incrementalism. You have somebody in office who's putting forth somewhat of a bold agenda. And Democrats either have to shit or get off the pot. Take a shit or get off the pot. Pick your pony. They can no longer pretend as if they're the party of the left. If when the guy that's in office is to the left, they don't toe his line. You can't have it both ways. There's a clarity about it. Beforehand, you could say, well, Obama's in that office, and they're following Obama, and blah, blah, blah. But in this case, you have somebody who's actually to the left. And the policies that person is putting up, and that policies that the person is trying to push, what are you going to do? If you're actually to the left, are you going to support that policy? Are you going to deal with lefties voting your ass out of office or not voting for you when it's time for you to run because of you not supporting Sanders? What are you going to do? There's a public pressure inherently built into this idea of these guys not supporting the president of the United States, particularly when that president is Bernie Sanders, and you have millions of people all across the United States who is animated on cloud fucking 9 with this guy in that office and angry like nobody's business when Democrats don't support their plan. If only for that, yes, I want him in that office. If only for that point. If only to make this clear distinction in this mind of what does it mean to be on the left, and the fact that the Democrats don't represent what they say they represent. This guy's actually to the left. This guy's pushing forth policies is actually to the left. Who's supporting him? Who's not? I love the clarity. I love the clarity. Now, that is a rosy picture. That is a path, or the potential path. Now, being a cynic for the moment, it's very possible that Sanders is playing a sheepdog. Sanders gets railroaded in primaries, and some corporate shill takes the spot. Meaning House, Senate, and you have some corporate shill who's now running for president of the United States. In which case, the path that lefties had gets closed. And Bob, you're back to vulgar incrementalism. That's assuming that the Democrat even wins. So, all of this hinges on whether or not you believe which path is more likely. I do see a path, though. The path is there, man. I believe the path is there. So, that's Oprah's job. That's funny. We don't need mainstream media. You need it for the 50s, 60s, 70-year-olds. For the youth, no, you don't. But you do need it for the older crowd. Captain Obvious. Well, why would they rig it against Bernie in 2020? They got away with it last time. Why wouldn't they? Did they get away with it? I mean, you had the overwhelming majority of the public that, I think it was like 70% or 60-some% that said they cheated. You had Don in Brazil coming out saying they cheated. Can you get away with it twice? Possibly. Can you get away with it twice and still expect the vote of a particular demographic that you're going to need to get you elected? That part I am sketchy about. That part I'm sketchy about. If the path doesn't turn, you turn. A wise man, not me, to mostly young. If the path doesn't turn, you turn. Here's the thing. If Sanders is cheated in 2020, Sanders needs to run third party and make sure that Democrat loses, or at the very least tries to win himself. There is no other path. He can't be supported at that point. If he's cheated twice and he accepts it, he can't be supported. At that point, he's far too weak. It's one thing. No, that's not true. Plum Jade, Bernie never talks foreign policy. That is not true. Look that up before you say that. Bernie Sanders is giving foreign policy speeches this year like nobody's business. Part of the reason why people think he's running is because of the foreign policy speeches. Jay Scott, things get difficult when we stop talking about 2016 and start talking about the future. Yeah, Jay Scott, to some degree, yeah. Future is unknown. The future is unknown. It's But you got to admit, it's somewhat exciting, right? It's somewhat exciting. Think of it this way. When Obama took office, do you remember 2008? This idea of hope and change. And for the longest time, there was this feeling of, oh my God, maybe this is what we were looking for. It slowly dawned on us, okay, this is not what we're looking for. This guy's just a Republican. Sanders is what Obama said he was, if that makes sense. Obama, whatever you want to think, primed the public for this idea of change. And when the public didn't get that idea of change, the public was pissed off. Hillary Clinton comes and pretends as if she's going to be status quo 2.0, and the public didn't like the previous status quo. So in no way were they going to vote for somebody else who said they were just the next continuation of status quo. My point here is that there's this feeling. This feeling can be completely wrong, but there's this feeling that there is a potential. And there's a potential for the first time in my lifetime, and the first time in my political awareness, that wasn't there before. It wasn't there before. We got bamboozled by Obama. Jim Hyden, yes. Bamboozled is a fucking understatement. That's a fucking Republican. Dean, Obama, Sanders, the stream of disappointments who conned us. Oh, Bob. Can't add Sanders to that list. Okay, you can say disappointment from the standpoint if he didn't call out the cheating. He didn't. Yeah, okay, fair enough. Conned is too strong. Conned is way too strong. Lord Ald. Bernie Sanders is selling the Russian narrative. I am ready to fucking defect. Well, you heard me say Sanders is a politician. I don't like it. I don't like it. The Russian thing is bullshit. Torben, Chris Cleese, Bernie Sanders is not Obama. No, he's not. This is kind of my point. This is the first time, man. There's this. I guess I feel like there's an opportunity that we didn't have before, if that makes sense. And like I said, I could be completely naive about this. I'm pretty sure Debbie would be like, "Oh, dude, you're so fucking naive." Fair enough. I take that criticism. I do feel like being conned. Any other candidate got shafted would demand an investigation or recount or anything. When? You look a little tired, or lighting is different. It's a little bit of both, D. Martin. Wait, I get back to D. Martin. Any candidate? What candidate? So, Al Gore. Yeah. Let me dispel this. So, Al Gore runs against George Bush. In running against George Bush, Al Gore, Florida's called for Gore. Now, George Bush's brother is running the state as the governor. And they're like, wait, this isn't done yet. Now, the Supreme Court stops and gives this over to George Bush. Didn't let a recount go through. Just gave it over to George Bush. This was a coup. If they would have ran Florida again and they would have had an honest count, I'm pretty sure Gore would have won Florida. But that's not what took place. They discounted hundreds of thousands of African-American votes in Florida. Think about that. Hundreds of thousands of votes. Al Gore knew about this. This wasn't something that Al Gore didn't know. When you hear Democrats scream about identity, think about this particular moment. Hundreds of thousands of African Americans were thrown off the rolls in Florida and not allowed to vote. It goes to Congress. You have House Representative members who are complaining and bitching about this and who are protesting this, particularly the Black Caucus. They couldn't get one senator to back them up. If they would have got one senator, they would have been able to, at the very least, proceed with the next step in challenging the election. They couldn't get one. Al Gore, the ridiculousness of this. Al Gore gaveling down one person after the next because he's vice president, which means he's Speaker of the House. Not Speaker of the House, but he's in charge of this particular proceeding, whatever. But he's gaveling down one person after the next as these people protest the election that he himself was in. As Al Gore is getting railroaded, Al Gore is gaveling down procedurally the people who are trying to protest in his defense and his honor. At which point did Al Gore really protest? Meaning, did Al Gore pitch for senators to come up for this, to fight for him on his behalf? No, he didn't. He didn't push further. John Kerry, the voting machines that were in Ohio was coming up with these weird numbers. John Kerry in no way protested this. John Kerry understood that he was being cheated. John Kerry didn't say squat. Hillary Clinton understood that she was being cheated, meaning people were being thrown off the rolls in some of these places. And even when Jill Stein asked to back up the vote, it was Jill Stein that asked for a recount, not Hillary Clinton. Even though Operation Crosscheck was pulling people off the rolls, even though people in Wisconsin was being thrown off the rolls, even though, like, I'm making a point to you that these guys are like Stalinists going to the gallows while at the same time applauding Stalin and the great Soviet system while they themselves are being executed by that exact same system. They don't say squat about it. It's not just Sanders. None of them calls out the cheating. It's only recent, like Canova, coming out saying, there's this little dice. I think these people are cheating. But for like the last 20 years, they've never said squat. They've never said squat. So put it in context. So you expect Sanders to say something when the last X number of people have never said squat about the process. So come on. It's not just Sanders. Not just Sanders at all. Also, Bob, I am sleepy. Not sleepy, but I'm tired. We, for the last 2 days, yesterday, I think we had like 8 miles of walking in the cold and the snow. It was like you're trekking through the snow. And then we have this, we went sledding earlier today, and you talking about pain. You're talking about pain. No, Jamal, Hillary didn't contest the election because it would have revealed the cheating she most likely would have included. Yes, I know. But I agree, Bob. I agree. And it's hard to say that these people cheated me when I cheated Bernie Sanders using some of the same techniques. Yes, that's true. I'm just making this point that not calling out the cheating is the norm, not abnormal. That's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at. Minor Talk with James. Inside the Department of Homeland Security, Secretary Kristen Nielsen also said to herself, this guy's trying to get the DNC nod for the 2020 poser. Torben Chris Gleaves, you got some strong nationalism when you as a country took all the Nazi scientists after World War with Operation Paperclip. Yeah. Nazi build the Saturn V rocket, Werner von Braun. Yeah, Operation Paperclip. I don't know if it was all the scientists, but yeah, we took right many of them, furthered them into the United States, and had those guys building rockets for us. Some of those guys were hardcore Nazis, man. Some of them weren't. Some of those guys were just governmental, like they were Nazis. Like for example, it's like you have some people who are Nazis, members of the party, and you have other people who are just soldiers and good Germans and scientists for this idea of working for the state and all this other stuff. Yeah, they brought those guys over. Not a question of respect. I do have a lot of stuff. Oh, Tomosa Young, now, man. I critique all you want, man. I like these conversations. Interstate cross-check is being contested in courts. It should be. This shit's vulgar. I mean, I could fucking around and take somebody's vote in this way. And then it's being used in ways that is just gross. Like, it's just blatantly, I don't want to say blatantly racist. It has nothing to do with racism. It has everything to do with these people vote for a particular party. And so if there's certain names like Mendoza, Tyrone, Jenkins, let's cross these people off the list. I see a T. Jenkins here, and I see another T. Jenkins somewhere else, so let's just cross this guy off the list. Yeah, it's fucking insane. Fucking insane. Outlaw nepotism in government. Yeah, agreed. Agreed. No more dynasties. See, I don't know how you stop that, bro. The dynasty part, unless people themselves make the decision that no more dynasties. Debbie should be put in charge of overseeing the primaries. Just saying, yes, Debbie should be. Fucking A, I'd vote for that. I'd vote for that big time. It's like NASA, their mission is space, but their end result is a military attack. Yeah, great. Guy Smalley, yeah. Yeah. Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about that, how the whole point of the space thing had little to do with just space and everything to do with the kind of contest with the Russians, with the Soviets. They put up Sputnik and they freaked people out. It's like, oh my God, these guys have technology that gets these things in space. We need to do something about it. Well, Kennedy comes out with a speech. We're going to the moon. Not because it is easy, but because it is hard. Love that speech. It's one of my favorite speeches. Mostly I'm blaming the Kennedys. Really equals libertarians for me, authoritarian for thee. Liberty for me, authoritarian for thee. Kennedy was pretty much the start of the installed politician and the idea that government should be for everything, for everyone, should be everything for everyone. No, you need to explain that one. I don't fully understand that one. Lincoln Chafee 2020. Lincoln Chafee 2020. Join Hillary fighting childhood obesity in Haiti. What do you mean by keeping food from them or giving them bad rice? Jim Iden. Blame Nixon. Hillary channels Nixon's evil spirit. Nixon was to the left of Hillary Clinton. You know that, right? Nixon was to the left. Eisenhower was to the left. Ronald Reagan to the left. All these people were to the left of Clinton, which shows you how far the party has moved over that way. I mean, it's fucking amazing. All right, guys, I'm going to call this quits because I still have one more, but I'm probably going to call it a night. We have a long trip tomorrow. We're heading to not Mexico. Shit. We're heading to Spain tomorrow. So that should be fun. But it's going to be a long trip. So I may do one more tonight, but I'm doubtful that I'm going to do one more. So I want to thank all of you guys for showing up. I want to thank all you guys for donating. It is immensely appreciated. Well, I should say supporting the show, not really donating. Well, I guess it is, depending on the context you want to use. But thank you guys for contributing to the show. Thank you guys for supporting it. I want to again thank all my patrons and thank all of the people for the super cash. And thanks all for the likes, subscribers, etc., etc., etc. You know. So you guys have a fucking awesome night. It is it's 6 p.m. there. Yeah, 6 p.m. there. It's like 12 o'clock here. That might be why, Bob. It's midnight here. Martina, Madrid. We're going to Madrid. I got my wife. My wife has been doing fucking awesome. She became president of her chapter. In addition to becoming president of her chapter, she ends up getting in a position in that particular job that she wanted. She finished up a certification. In fact, she finished like 2 certifications in this year that she wanted to do. And so the least I felt like I could do for it was I bought her a trip to Oslo. And anytime I go abroad, I like to do more than one place because it's like, I don't know the next time I want to go abroad. So they had a dirt cheap connecting flight to Madrid. So I was like, fuck it, let's do it. So that was our plan. So government should be protect the majority from power, not working for the power. How do you do that? You do that through policy. You do it through policy. Hoodie woman, Louisiana, Rocco and Jamal at 40. You're a cool, long whippersnapper. I'm a whippersnapper. Don't feel like it. Right now, everything hurts. Yeah, everything hurts right now. But I appreciate it, hoodie woman. All right, guys. You all have a good night. Of course, if you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you guys can always support through Patreon. Thanks, guys.